It's 5:30. Today's date is January 22, 2018. We're in the City Council chambers having our City Council meeting. Notice to the public, the Mayor and City Council welcome comments from the public during discussion. You are required to step to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and limit the time used to present your remarks in order that others may be given the opportunity to speak. And typically we consider that to be about a 3-minute time limit. The meeting is called to order. Those who are able, please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, or Temporary Madam Clerk, will you call the roll call, please?
Cahill? Here. Gowdy?
Here.
Hoop?
Here.
Lamer? Martin?
Here.
Weirin? Here.
Number 5 on the agenda tonight is comments by the Mayor, City Council, and City Administrator. I know several of us do want to make some comments. I'd like to comment about the award given by the Thousand Friends of Iowa to the Kibbe Building Project, and there's a new Vision Marshalltown video on that that's available on YouTube. It's really inspiring, and if you haven't been to that park, it's pretty cool. They show pictures of each of the nice 4 residences that are up above that building, so I encourage people to look at that. Are there any council comments?
Your Honor,
Mr. Martin.
I too would like to say something positive about our notation in state and national media with regard to our Mega 10 project park. It certainly deserves that attention, and others from other cities are rapidly contacting Marshalltown folks for their advice and how to build something similar. I do know that. So again, my appreciation goes to the Park and Rec staff, to the donors, Martha and Ty Foundation amongst others, the many who gave of their own to for sponsorships, as well as other financial support for this successful project. So I'm very proud of it. We as Marshalltonians should be very proud of it as well.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? Madam Administrator.
Thank you. Just a few comments. On next Tuesday, the 30th of January, we will be holding our first open house as part of the Highway 14 corridor study from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the Woodbury Elementary Cafeteria. And so we encourage anybody, whether you live and work on the corridor from the Iowa River Bridge down to Anson Street, of North 3rd Avenue, and South 3rd Avenue, that if you live or work along there or you live in the city, to please attend to provide your input. And then I'd also just like to mention our new website, marshalltown-ia.gov, which I do have pulled up here in the chamber. You can sign up for different notifications and things to get instantly notified when agendas have been released for the city council, or for a variety of other things, including city news, by clicking on the Notify Me button. That is the far right button of those that are showing.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is recognition of long-term service by our city employees. I've asked Chief Tupper to hand out 2 certificates and to take care of the photographing duties this time, instead of running around the end.
Good evening. Mike Tupper, Marshalltown Police Department, and it's my honor and pleasure tonight to be up here with 2 of Marshalltown's finest, 2 real-life heroes, and 2 people that I greatly respect and look up to. Sergeant Melinda Roop is celebrating this month 30 years of service with the city of Marshalltown, and Officer Ray Maxey is celebrating 10 years of service with the city of Marshalltown. I'll start with Ray. Ray is one of the more proactive and productive police officers that we have. He's a hard charger, former Marine. How many years in the Marine? 24 years in the Marine Corps, gunnery sergeant. What I really like about Ray is he's a straight shooter, and I mean when he's talking to me, but he's also a straight shooter with his handgun abilities as well. But Ray will tell you how it is, and Ray has a tough outer crust, but he's got a warm heart inside. He'll do anything for you. Ray's a informal leader in our police department, does a phenomenal job, well liked by his peers, his supervisors, and people that he works with in the community. And we're just very lucky to have somebody like Ray serving the city of Marshalltown as a police officer here. Very proud of your service, Ray. I appreciate everything you do for us. You do a phenomenal job. What you do every day makes a difference, and I appreciate everything that you do to protect and serve in our community. Now, Sergeant Roop, 30 years. She worked as a 911 operator once upon a time. She's been a patrol sergeant for about the last 5 years. Sergeant Roop and Tricia Tyne are broke down barriers in our department to the first 2 female officers to achieve the rank of sergeant in the Marshalltown Police Department. Melinda is also a K-9 police expert. She's well known throughout not just Iowa, but the country for her expertise when it comes to police dogs. She's pretty much built our police dog program from the ground up, and we wouldn't have the police dog program that we have today without her. She's a superstar. People from all over the country will call her seeking advice about K-9 program. So I'm very fortunate to have her here. She's also beloved by her supervisors, her peers, people in the community. Gentleman in the back here, Gordy, was telling a story right before, and I won't tell the whole story, but the moral of the story was how Melinda went out of her way to help somebody. I mean, we all go to calls, and there's certain things we have to do. There's a bare minimum expectation. But Melinda is one of these people that always goes above and beyond what is minimally expected, because she wants to make sure that she's serving people, you've heard me before, with passion and compassion. And she does that every day. Sometimes I think a lot of folks think Melinda has a tough outer crust, and she is tough, one of the toughest people I've ever met, but she's got a heart of gold, and she'll do anything for you. And Melinda, I just want you to know I really appreciate your service, everything that you do for us. 30 years of service. I can guarantee you've changed lives, you've saved lives, and we appreciate everything you've done for the city of Marshalltown. So thank you both very much.
Great.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not here tonight, but 3 other city employees who have all been 15 years with us include Lorraine Porter, Stephen Hunter, and Jerry Fry. So we'd like to recognize their service to the city as well. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second. Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Call the roll, please.
Gowdy,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Lamer, Martin,
Yes.
Weirin,
Yes.
Cahill.
Yes.
Thank you. The consent agenda is approved. Will you read the items on it, please?
Yes. Approve council minutes of December 28th, 2017, January 5th, 2018, and January 8th, 2018. Approve bill list in the amount of $785,712.70. Receipt of building permit report for December 2017 and annual building permit report. Resolution authorizing hiring of police reserve officer Larry Lubbert. Renew liquor licenses pending fire inspection for Quick Star 607, Jiffy Convenience Stores, Abaratas La Salud, Dollar General Store 2019 and 4206, Mama de Grotto's Pasta and Pizza, Elmwood Country Club, Vaughn's Pub, Plaza Mexico, Iowa River Brewing Company.
Thank you. On to item 7 of the agenda. The first item is to approve new liquor licenses. Is there a motion to approve those?
I move for approval.
Second, Your Honor.
Moved and seconded. Call the roll, please.
Weirin,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Gowdy,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Carried. On to resolution number 8. Is there a motion to approve 8.1?
So moved, Your Honor.
I'll second.
Yeah, it's been moved and seconded, and I guess for the record, it's to approve the Glenwood Place Planned Unit Development Amendment. Would you, discussion?
Steve Trowski with CGA Engineers representing Glenwood Place. They are seeking to amend the planned unit development on file. They would like to put in some resident parking, and this would mean that they would need to amend the plan by removing a townhouse unit to put 2 covered garages there. This was discussed and approved at the last Plan and Zoning Commission meeting after a written letter of support from the neighbor was gathered. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about it.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion?
But is this one of their the older townhomes, the newer townhomes? Because they have a couple different phase projects right there, correct?
Correct. They have 3 townhomes that were built of a total of 21 that were previously approved by this council. They are seeking to remove one of those 21 future but unbuilt units and replace it with resident parking.
Thank you for clarifying that for me.
Any further discussion? Let's call the roll on this one.
Gowdy,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Weirin,
Yes.
Cahill.
Yes.
Thank you. That is carried as well. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 8.1 for a special election to fill the vacancy of the 2nd Ward Councilor?
I move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Let's call the roll on that one.
Cahill,
Yes.
Gowdy,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Weirin.
Yes.
Carried. Thank you. On to ordinances 9.1 is the one that would perhaps take off the table the ordinance relating to establishing the licensing of massage therapy businesses. Is anyone who, is there a motion to bring that off the table? That has died for lack of a motion, so that will continue to be tabled indefinitely.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I'd like to say a couple words. With this endeavor to look at a ordinance, I believe it's proactive in its feeling and intent. I was hopeful at the outset for this to be a win-win-win situation for the public, for law enforcement, and for licensed therapists as well, massage therapists. We've been all over the board with this as council folk. There are strong cases for each side of this. I would hope that discussion would continue in the future in a positive sense, and that some resolution or at least progress would be made in the area. We certainly would like to be proactive, support our public and our private businesses as well as our law enforcement. So those are my comments. I hope we carry this forward.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Any other comments from the council? On to item 10, discussion items. 10.1 is the draft of the 2008 strategic plan.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. We met back in late November to talk about the progress that we had made on our 4 goals over the last year and where we would look to be in the next year. And so I've kept everything in the same format that we've previously used for our update, and then made some changes, some in very small text, which I apologize for, just to kind of show you where we have changed. To start with goal 1, which is to expand and improve our housing stock in the community, I would say this is the goal where we had a lot of discussion, and where I would say we've made the most additions. So we still want to keep our objectives of supporting our partners in housing development and assisting developers with incentives and information about development and the development process and infrastructure. But there are some specific things that we certainly want to try to do underneath that, with using the MED housing study to our advantage to really help create some targeted housing development, or when somebody comes to us and says they'd like to do something, that we've already had some ideas in mind of what we could do and where. The other third objective, which is brand new, is to look at innovative ways to further enhance housing quality and quantity. And really, this is where a lot of different things could go. We talked a little bit in our strategic planning session about an abandoned or vacant building ordinance, the regulation of contract property sales. We have implemented a neighborhood revitalization program for this calendar year, and then really looking at what are we doing with what we get back from the demolition, the dilapidated and dangerous building program, and making sure that we are not now the owners or keepers of vacant lots. And then finally, working with Vision Marshalltown to investigate a land bank. And so I'm wondering if there's any questions kind of on what we've added there. Really only removing one thing about, putting information on our website and making information accessible.
Could you just briefly explain a land bank?
Yes. So, what if the city did not have to be the one who is taking up all of these properties? As you know, when we go to purchase property, it sometimes is not the easiest process. We can't really have an open discussion about acquisition prices and other things. What if there was an entity within the community who could strategically purchase properties that were dilapidated in an easier way than we could, and really help towards putting those into a redevelopment plan? So I know the Vision Marshalltown Housing Committee is going to be looking at that concept and seeing if they can make a recommendation on how something like this could fit into the community as well. Thanks. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments?
Okay, I'm going to go to goal 2 then, where the big thing that we're crossing off the list on goal 2, which is the only thing that we're crossing off the list, is updating our city website, which we have done. I think one of the things that myself and all department heads and staff members have learned is getting a new website is just the beginning, it's not the end, and that there's still quite a bit of work that needs to go into something that's brand new to make sure that it is accurate and up to date and contains the most current information for the public. We did add on this one some items under goal or objective 1 for enhancing our public image, which is related to visually enhancing the appearance of neighborhoods. And we talked a lot about sidewalks, and there are a few different areas throughout sort of this whole sort of revised strategic plan where I've incorporated some sidewalk information. I wanted to make sure that we still captured providing additional efforts towards property maintenance enforcement. That's really the one area that over the last year at least we haven't done a lot, just because that's ending up in court every time you have non-compliance. And so with a code enforcement inspector on hand, hopefully we can provide some additional efforts towards that and be able to have some marked data of how many property maintenance cases we've pursued and what those outcomes are. We also have reviewed the current sidewalk ordinance. We talked about creating a cost-sharing plan for property owners to replace existing hazardous sidewalks. Our insurance carrier does not like to review slip, trip, and fall claims, and so they have tended to ask that we, be proactive in assessing sidewalks, which are the adjacent property owner's responsibility. A number of other cities have gone about that if they're going to, there's some sort of cost sharing because it's a community benefit to have the sidewalk in place. So we'll come back to you with information on that throughout the year. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, the Highway 14 corridor study, that's going to be a big part of enhancing our public image. So I wanted to capture that here in this goal. Any questions on this one? Okay.
Goal number 3.
Goal number 3, which is continually improving our organizations and services. This is one where we have a lot of crossing out and then some adding in. Specifically, we've done quite a bit in Objective 1, which is reviewing our policies, procedures, and ordinances for update. But we also we're taking off a few, but adding a few related to the sidewalk ordinance and adopting a fleet policy. And as I mentioned, there is a little bit of crossover between some of these of where sidewalks fall. The second objective, we've completed a Parks and Rec master plan, but we've talked about a master plan for an inner city trail system. We also talked about the study about implementing sidewalks where gaps currently exist, and I do have a file of information in my office, which I will make copies of for all of you, and after I can get kind of an update put together, because I'm still struggling to figure out what might have happened between 2007 and now, and if we did any of those projects. So you will be getting an updated packet of information here in the next few weeks. We also want to plan for development of the Marshalltown Industrial Park. Plan for development doesn't mean that we're actually doing something without having, a bird in hand, but it just means that we're putting into place the things that we need to do to be able to act quickly should some development happen there. Objective 3 related to our employees has not changed, that we want trained employees and cross-trained employees and a continued focus on safety in the workplace. Some things that did happen over the last year where we did continue a code enforcement nuisance abatement program, and we have staffed that, and that we did hire a stormwater coordinator to basically comply with our MS4 requirements. And so under Objective 4, I have just added in the Lean Process Improvement Program as something that we will be focusing on in the next year.
What's the condition or the status of formulating the Aviation Authority? Can you give us an update on where we are and what our thinking has been?
Thinking was that this is just something that we can't consider right now. It would be something that would be funded on our tax levy, and just knowing that we're adding on debt for our tax levy, that now's probably not the time to consider that formation at this point. That we would, maybe keep this out there in the future, but now is probably not the best time to have that conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments or questions?
Anna Wolvers, 213 Thomas Drive, Marshalltown. Just a question on the trails. I know several other smaller area communities have collaborated and worked with different organizations to have like a splash feature or a cool down incorporated into their trails. My dad is a business owner in Bondurant, and they just redid their trail behind his office within the last 5 years. And a lot of people that are using the trails could also benefit and utilize a splash feature of some sort. And I know you guys think we're a broken record and we keep coming back with this, but we're not getting a lot of answers or feedback. You want community involvement in us to come and speak and we sit and then we don't hear anything. But it would enhance the image of the community. It would also go along with the Park and Rec survey of what people want in this town, and it would go working together, utilizing funding sources and volunteers all together. So something to consider if you're already fundraising for the trails, which we already have, to maybe incorporate that so it's not two separate features.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Okay, goal 4, this is where we look to recognize that quality of life depends on our community and not just the city. And so we've identified a few specific partners and partnerships where we would continue to work. The Marshalltown Central Business District being one of them. We've crossed off the SMID, been there, done that. It's not anywhere in their 2-year work plan or draft 2-year work plan, so we're going to leave that there until they bring that back for some sort of discussion. But what we have talked about and what they did talk about in their strategic planning was really looking at ways to work with the life safety code to reduce impediments to development. And just today, the fire chief supplied me with a flyer about how the new tax code has done something that might help us in that effort. So that is one of those things where it could be all encompassing, but where we would work with the MCBD. The other thing that has come up, not just from MCBD, but from other entities, is streamlining the process for approval of events downtown. And so this is something that I know, as we talked about our internal processes and those that we have that impact the community, that our special events approval process does need to be looked at. Hopefully a new website will sort of enhance that. We also have a partnership with Trails Inc. The in-city portion of the Iowa River Trail is done, so we can cross that off the list. But knowing that we have applied for that National Endowment for the Arts grant that I did put in here, that we would support the development of a master plan for the Iowa River Trail, our involvement in that master plan sort of is questionable depending on whether or not we get the grant, which we won't know until April. And then one of the things that Trails Inc. has identified as being something where we could help is to promote the fundraising efforts that they bring forward related to continuing to extend the trail out in the county and some bridge work that needs to be done. We also have a number of other partnerships with the county working on the public nuisance properties. Alliant Energy has sought us out to see if we'd be interested in being a hometown rewards community, which we can certainly talk about. We are currently working with a large group of stakeholders on a wayfinding master plan. The Sister Cities program has asked for support. And then something new that's kind of come about in the Park and Rec master plan and just conversations with our entities. The school district and the YMCA provide recreational programming. We also provide recreational programming, but the three of us have never sat down together and really looked at where do we overlap and duplicate, and is there a reason why we duplicate, or what that looks like. And so this would be something that we would be working on in the next year, as we really look at, quite a bit of our recreation programs have seen declining enrollment, with very specific ones seeing, huge increases in enrollment. So how do we make sure that we're not providing something that someone else is already doing? And then supporting Vision Marshalltown, and then finally, working with Iowa State University on data-driven decision-making, which we'll hopefully know more about here in the coming months. And then the final objective there is really talking about the things that city employees, including elected officials, can do to support quality of life outside of our jobs, with the various different groups that exist. Specifically Crime Stoppers, the Red Cross Smoke Detector Installation, Neighborhood Watch, but also looking at promoting volunteer opportunities to city staff. We did have a nice time, and I can't remember the park's name, but I think it was Arnold's Park, pulling weeds and cleaning up here this spring. And then we've looked at other opportunities where staff can get involved throughout the year as well. And so really want to do more to promote those types of community volunteer opportunities to staff. And then one of the things that we did talk about at our strategic planning was removing the All-America City application from our list of to-do, that this would be something that really needs to come from the greater community to decide that we want to apply, and then we can figure out how our role fits into that, should that effort move forward.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? I will say about Crime Stoppers, at the board meeting today, there was a report about how many tips it has generated. It is significantly higher than what Ames experienced, and we kind of used Ames as our template, and the cameras are up and running and gaining momentum. The smaller towns are looking at putting cameras in. Albion is going to probably have the most cameras of any town in the next month or two, in fact. So that is going well, just to report. Thank you. Let's go to item 10.11, amendment to fireworks ordinance. Chief?
Hello again, Mike Tupper, Marshalltown Police Department. You'll find this hard to believe, but when we investigate fireworks complaints, people don't always tell us the truth about who's responsible for those complaints, and it can become a little bit of a cat and mouse game to try to deal with problems. So what this ordinance does is it allows the police department to issue a citation to a property owner who knowingly allows fireworks to be shot off from their property. So I think that this would be an effective tool to help us deal with problems, and it would definitely shorten the amount of time we have to invest in these investigations and allow us to quickly resolve issues. So staff would recommend that you approve this amendment. Happy to answer any questions.
I would question that where you say knowingly permit. Is that if, for say, I would not be at home, somebody would come on my property and shoot them off. Am I still, is it like a host thing in the alcohol side? Is it?
No, I don't think it's like the host thing with the alcohol side. I mean, if you're not on your property and it happens, obviously we're probably not going to be able to prove knowingly permit. But what happens a lot of times is the property owner is there. It's just we ask, who owns these fireworks, who was shooting it off, and people look at us like we're speaking a different language. So, I mean, we still would have some work to do, Mr. Hoop, but this would make our job a lot easier.
Because that property owner could sit there likewise and look. I didn't
Yeah,
even
but
know they were doing it.
if the property owner's there, I think we're going to be able to make a case that
Okay.
they knew what was going on.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
How would that incorporate people that rent property? Because my neighbors used to rent the property and shoot them on the porch, and they don't own the property.
For the benefit of those who watch this on TV, all three of them, would you repeat what the question was before you answer it?
Yeah, the question was how would this impact people that rent and they don't actually own the property, but they're renting the property and living there. I guess my assertion, and I'm certainly not a lawyer, so I'd defer to Roger here, but my assertion would be that if you're renting, you're still responsible for the property, and we could still cite you. Do you disagree?
I think you could somehow word it whether you're the owner or person in control of the property. A renter would be in control of the property as such, although they may not be an owner.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Would it be appropriate to ask if there's a consensus that we should direct the staff to go forward with this?
Yeah, I move that we move forward.
Motion by Warren, is there a second?
Thank you.
A second.
Second by Cahill. Any other discussion before we vote? Let's call the roll.
Weirin,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Gowdy,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Lamer,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Period. Thank you. Next item is 10.111 property tax valuations.
Diana Steiner, Finance Director. Just give me a minute to pull up my document. So the county finally provided us our property tax valuations. So I went through and updated these charts so you can see the growth over the years. So this is the current year, upcoming year for fiscal year 19, and this is 18, 17, and 16. So what did the numbers mean? Well, as you know, when the county auditor goes out and assesses the property, that's not what that's not what we're able to get taxed on. Excuse me. Sorry, have a cold. So there's actually a percentage that is used times that assessed value to give the taxable value, and I'll show that to you on the next chart I have. So on the right here, is without the gas and electric utilities, and this is with the gas and electric utilities. So the property tax levy, a regular general levy, which all cities can claim, cannot exceed $8.10 per thousand. So that's what these are regarding. So the ones that are capped out, we can't increase it any more than we're allowed to. The citizens voted to support the public library, so that levy's 27 cents. Our emergency levy's capped at 27 cents, and our capital projects is capped at 67.5 cents. So this kind of shows you the property tax levies for the 810 levy. You can see it's been jumping, but really has slowed down. Any questions on this chart? Oops.
So we've got
Can you help me?
It's up under city council, the first one.
This one? Okay.
If you go over to download, that little arrow, and then if you want to click on PDF. Yeah.
This
that-
one?
Yep. I would just hit OK and then go back and download it as an HTML document.
This one?
Yep. The first one there. Or maybe it just won't work at all.
Well, anyway, the second chart that you have shows you the different types of property. So we have residential, commercial, industrial, and multi-residential. These are the properties that have been rolled back. So you can see between fiscal year 16 and 17, fiscal year 18 and 19, there's an increase of $23 million for this type of property. And if you go to the charts, you can see that the residential is climbing slightly, even though the rollback is decreasing. There is no state backfill on the residential. The multi-residential, there also is no state backfill, and the percentages continue to decrease, so that means we get less taxable value. The commercial is creeping extremely slow. That is capped at 90% of the assessed value. There is state backfill to replace this lost revenue. At least that's what the state legislature should appropriate to us. Whether they will or not, we don't know. And the last one is the industrial, and that has taken a decline, and that's based on a 90%. That's based on a 90% rate as well. And there is backfill for that. So any questions on the valuations? When we actually bring you the property tax valuations for the city in its entirety, it will have more meaning.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The industrial property where it's going down, did that have the settlement with Lennox on their evaluation? That probably is one of the big reasons, isn't it?
I believe that settlement was like a 3-year, but it kept them at the same level that they would have been in the current fiscal year. So there wouldn't have been growth there, but there wouldn't have been a decline either. So that one shouldn't have swayed, but I don't know that we know of any other significant changes on industrial property, but we can certainly reach out to the county assessor and see if there's any information that he can provide into that.
So does that mean in 2021 and 22, it's all going to be we'll get a third of that decrease?
No, it was, so their valuation, I believe the agreement was a 3-year valuation agreement for this current fiscal year to basically hold it at a level. So we would have seen that decline in this current fiscal year. And so then it's the same amount here for the valuations that you're seeing for next fiscal year, and then would hold steady for the fiscal year following. So we wouldn't see any growth, but we're experiencing the decline in the valuation and what that means to the overall valuations in this current fiscal year versus next fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Is that it? Okay. Are you item number 10.5 as well? Okay. Oh, 4, sorry. Yeah, I don't do Roman numerals.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have showed you this chart. Well, we already talked about it, but now it came up. So, okay. Okay, the departments put together their operating budgets for fiscal year 19 and also spent time to re-estimate fiscal year 18. So tonight we're going to be talking about the general fund, 001, 010, and 050. Funds 030, 31, and 32, they're also considered general fund money, but they were presented to you last week as part of the CIP discussion, so we're not going to go over that again at this point in time. We'll hit it on the next agenda item. See if I can bring this up.
So just hit continue down at the bottom, that blue button.
I provided to you an easy index so you can find the different departments and what page number they're on. Where should I go to get the next page?
I think you have to go back to that first tab. It's whatever tab you opened up the document in.
Okay.
The memo was your first one, and then the detail is the last one.
So this first column of numbers is the actual fiscal year 17 that we closed out June 30th of last year. The next column is our budget that you adopted back in March of last year. The next column is the year-to-date budget. The year-to-date actual, and this is through December 31st, so approximately 6 months of data. The next column is the parent budget, which we're calling our re-estimated 2018 budget. And then we have our 2019 budget, and then this one just compares the two between the re-estimated and the FY19. Gives you a dollar amount and gives you the percentages. So when we put the budgets together, we included the negotiated step increases and cost of living adjustments of 2.65% for all non-temporary employees. We also projected a health insurance increase of 5% for the last half of fiscal year 19. We will not implement this increase until if it's needed in November. We'll reevaluate it. And if it needs to go up, it's already budgeted. We have not had an increase since January of 2014. We did reduce local option sales tax revenues since Alliant Construction Project has left town. We are still budgeting the backfill from the state. The governor has put it in her recommended budget. However, we don't know if the legislature will approve that. The general fund property tax levy is shown in function functions 6021. So if you look 0001, 6021, that's where all the general fund revenues are. which is the finance department's budget. So all the property taxes and hotel motel tax and that type of stuff sits in that budget. So you won't see it individually. So even though the library has their own levy, it still is shown in the finance department's budget as part of the property tax. So if you went to the very last page of this document, well, of Fund 001, you will see that we have a deficit. Find the right page.
I think you can go to the last page and there's a summary of all the three funds together.
So Fund 001 has a deficit of $467,696. This is different than the amount that was put in your memo on page 2. The chart is correct, but the first sentence on item 6 is incorrect. Well, this does not include our transfer in from the local option sales tax, which normally helps offset this shortfall. So this is how we're recommending or would like your consideration in taking care of the deficit. First of all, we found out last week that we will no longer be responsible for doing the E911. So if we take out those expenses and those revenues and deduct off the employee benefits transfer, that would be a savings of $447,000 to the general fund. This then would only leave us a $20,000 deficit. So with your lost revenues, in the past, the council designated was 5% of the local option sales tax. So we're estimating $3.1 million. 5% of that is $155,000. So even though we wouldn't have had the election last year, we would still have money to cover the deficit. Well, since we did pass the local option sales tax, 22% of $3.1 million, which is the percent of the council designated now, that would give us $682,000. So again, by covering with the $20,000 deficit, you would then have available $661,000. So now the question comes to you. Do you wish to receive requests and proposals for funding from community entities? We've already received 2. We can bring those forth at the next meeting.
Then it's your proposal to cover that $20,000 debt out of the lost funds?
Yes.
Okay, so it's just 20,000?
Mhm.
Oh, I thought it was 447.
Well, we're going to go back and eliminate the E911.
Yeah, yeah. But I thought after you got through doing that, you said it was 447,000 we were in the hole.
No.
No. Okay. All right. Yeah, I saw that.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to cover that first, and then we got cash left over.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's
And
what we're going
that's-
to recommend to you.
And that no, that's okay.
Okay.
I'll get my thoughts together here pretty soon.
I will say that, one of the things that we did at our strategic planning before strategic planning was there was a survey that you that you filled out related to some different options. You don't have to use local option sales tax here. That's obviously the easiest thing to recommend versus reviewing different fees and things at this point. So that's why we're recommending it to you. But if there is anything you would like to pursue in place of that, we can certainly pursue that.
I think it'd be nice to see if you could find that $20,000 so we don't have to use any of the lost funds.
So what I will say is we did go through and, departments have reduced. There were a number of things that we cut out to get to the point where this was the deficit that we had. So I wouldn't recommend that departments go back and cut anymore. We haven't done the calculations on it, but last year we were sitting at 83% of our general fund budget is wages and benefits, 17% is everything else. And so that has been the number that's been cut for years and years and years. Not much has been added to that that at this point. So I know it's a small amount, but that's where I'd recommend that we'd bring back a fee proposal for something, whether it be parking or something else that would look to take care of that deficit.
I don't like that idea. If just thinking out loud, if we have to instigate a 5% health insurance raise, and they're already getting a 2.6, that means our employees are going to benefit over almost an 8% increase in wages and benefits for the year. That's just a little bit high, I think,
Well,
to meet what everybody else is getting. So I think we need to not get in a big rush about where we're going to spend the money. I think we need to find out. We need to go back and see if there's somewhere else we could save it, and that's why I brought that item up, because I think a 7.6% raise to the employees is pretty big.
Well, and let's just make clear that we have actually not seen any health insurance increases here recently.
I understand.
That is actually paid for by the employee benefits tax levy, not the 810. So there is a little bit of difference. What we're doing is we're proactively trying to levy for that in case something happens, so that we don't run that fund negative should there actually be an increase.
I understand that.
But just because
but you're not getting my point.
Well, but I also want to clarify, just because there'd be a 5% cost increase to the city doesn't mean that employees wouldn't bear some part of that.
I understand that.
And so that's where to say it's a 7.65% increase to employees isn't 100% true at this point. So that wouldn't be an accurate statement, because there probably would be employee cost share in any insurance increase.
I think the employee cost share right now is 20/80, isn't it? We're paying 80% of it.
I'm not sure off the top of my head. I don't know if you know
I think
that.
that's right.
I don't recall.
We can get you that information.
So it's still going to be a 7% if my number's real. Anyway, that's why I mentioned that I thought maybe rather than use other funds, that we ought to take a look at it. As of for your 4 questions that you ask, I think it's only fair to ask people if other entities would like us to participate. I'd like to see what they are and who they are, and see if there is benefit to us. And if there's benefit to us, I think we can look at them. I don't care about the second one. That's not a big deal. The third one, I don't want us to use that lost funds up all at once. I think we ought to keep a little reserve. My points. Somebody else can.
Other comments or questions?
Yeah, yes, Your Honor. I looked in the line items to see if I could see sister cities. It was mentioned in the goals. Is it already in there, or is that one of those written requests?
That is one of the written requests at this point.
Okay. And that was relatively small, I know. $1,000 to $5,000, somewhere in there.
Less than 5,000.
Less than 5,000. I would be in favor of partially funding the sister cities. They do a lot with donations, and of course all the kids that participate, their families.
I agree. But
Contribute.
I think if we open it up and let all those people make applications, and then we can just review them all, don't you think?
Yeah, that seems fair.
Seems fair.
Mm-hmm. There's got to be some guidelines, though. I mean, Sister Cities is really city related, which is nice, but
yeah, we haven't done much for them either.
No, not for quite a while.
I don't like the idea of using the tax increment financing for downtown improvements. I think if we got this cash left, we ought to look at doing that out of cash rather than using tax increment financing. I think we can find another way to pay for that, as long as we got cash.
So we can bring the request back at the next meeting. Another one I'm aware of is the community band is asking for an increase.
I have one question.
Okay.
Before we go any further, did I understand right that the fireworks didn't get funded last year? That they are short?
The city did give them funding last year.
Yes, but no, I understand that, but I'm asking if anybody else knows. I heard by the grapevine that wasn't enough funding and they came up $2,000 short. Does anybody know?
I heard the same thing.
Okay, so they are short, so, what?
I think Mr. Greenbauer approached Rotary about that as well.
Okay. I think that's something that I think it's something we need to not overlook.
May I ask, with this process, if we are asking for requests, do we put out a formal invitation for people to submit requests, or do people just know about it through this method, or
I think if you're looking to take additional requests, what we would probably do is, knowing that we have a special meeting on Monday, February 5th at noon, that we would put out some sort of notice to have things turned in by probably Tuesday the 30th or Wednesday the 31st, and we would just give you a spreadsheet with backup documentation, and then you'd need to take, on the 5th, you'd need to be prepared to take votes on that to determine who gets funded and at what levels.
do we have guidelines for that? I heard that mentioned before.
Nope, we do not.
We've never done this before that I remember.
In
This
the
is
past,
very-
it's been a really a off-the-cuff type of thing going year-long when requests could come in, and a pliant council would take those under consideration and maybe fund them and maybe not. But oftentimes, yes was the answer. I suggest, like our city administrator said, that we have a deadline for those requests. Other entities do the same thing. They come in and we have a deadline and look at them, look at our budget, and see what we've done in the past and what we're capable of doing. There will be more requests than the 2 or 3 that you've got now. I know of several, like 3 or 4.
Do you feel that that we need any guidelines, or is it open to anyone within our city boundaries that can apply for funding from the city?
I think that's up to your interpretation, all of you, what you would like to do for that and who you think is worthy of receiving city funding. And I should clarify, this would be funding from local option sales tax. We're not looking at running the general fund into debt further to do this, that this would be from local option sales tax.
Other discussion or questions?
Mr. Mayor, one thing I wanted to bring up while we were on this subject is, as I look around, you can definitely see the difference in electronic devices that we're using. I'd like to put in a proposal to have staff look into a uniform laptop for all the council. I think it's necessary. We're in the movement right now of going paperless. I think that we'd like to do that fairly quickly. And so I would like to have staff look into laptops, preferably with touch screens. I think everybody's familiar now with the system we have up and running on the website. And as you know, or the public can witness, a lot of us are using these now. But it would be nice if we had uniform ones that we could go back and forth. We do have we do have now a porthole that we can get into the finances. So if we have a question, Diane brings it up, we can bring it up on each one of our individual laptops and ask questions off of that. So I would request that we do that along with all the rest of the requests, and I think it's something that we need to delve into and get us up to speed and get rid of some of this paper that I know we spend quite a bit of money on.
I would suggest the staff could check with the school district and see what they did, because I think the school board members do that very thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, if we could get that done, I think that would benefit all.
I'm just not sure I'm smart enough to learn another device.
I'm pretty sure that we can have BDH, our technology consultant, put something together for the January 29th special meeting.
Okay. Other comments, questions?
So our second question has to do with you receiving proposals regarding departments, either possibly needing more staff or other special needs that they may have. Like Jessica said, we did trim everything back pretty lean. So if there is fund available, which means basically the $20,000 deficit would increase, but you would cover it with the local option sales tax.
Along the lines of technology, I would like to make sure that our departments have the technology that they need in order to do their jobs. I've wondered about our new code enforcement inspector, right? To see, how that system is coming along, and is it, what does he need for his role? Because a lot has changed since we had a full-time code enforcement person. So, the faster things can go, the better. So I would rather see that than have a device here. I don't use the device up here, so I'll give mine up.
Well, I can tell you that with our code enforcement inspector, things are going well. Kind of the nice thing is he didn't know how things were done before, and so he just jumped right into the InterGov system and has been doing very well with it. So I would say there aren't any technology needs there at this point that wouldn't involve us probably building out something else within that InterGov system. But at this point, I think we're fully to where we want to be on the InterGov. The one thing that I will say that I've been talking to Ann Selness, who's not here tonight, related to technology, with our website is done by a company called Civic Plus, and they have some various modules that fit into things, including one called Civic Rec. And she is waiting for a price quote on that to basically be to replace the system called ActiveNet, which has turned out to not be the greatest newfangled thing that we had hoped it would be. And then basically utilize the Civic Rec to do everything from producing pool passes to doing a little bit more above and beyond what the current website can do with facility reservations and tracking and things. So I do know that she is waiting for a cost quote on that. I don't know if any other department heads are pursuing any technology changes at this point that they would like to mention, but addressing technology issues is one of the things that relates directly back to our strategic plan to make sure that we're finding those efficiencies.
Well, it's not like it ever gets more or less expensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It's just such a big part of our lives now in our work, and for some of us at home too, it really can be disruptive when it's not working well. So I would like to see departments really up to speed, as much as possible before. I just don't. I disagree, Mr. Gowdy. I don't think I need a device. Thank you.
Your Honor, going back to your code enforcement officer, I'd like to see that so that he has the equipment in his vehicle, so if he goes out, he can print the ticket right there. He doesn't have to come back to the office and do it. He'll have a computer and a printer right in the truck, and he can print that ticket and hang it on the door if he needs the grass mowed or whatever, so that while he's there, he does it and he keeps on going.
So we are required to provide notice under Iowa law through certified mail. And so for the most part, there's still going to be an office component.
That's fine. But if he writes a ticket and hangs on the door.
There's no tickets that he is it's the notice things that are happening. And so generally if he's going to be issuing an abatement notice, it's going to be after notice has been provided, and it's going to go directly to the property owner. He's not physically issuing any tickets. A municipal infraction would have to be something that's served by a law enforcement officer. And so there's some differences there. So he's not writing any tickets, I should say.
I guess what I'm trying to tell you is if he come out to my house and he said, your grass is too long, and he gives me this little ticket that says, hey, before I do any more, if you mow your grass, it's taken care of. We don't have to go any further. I think that is community service rather than just filing all the legal papers. And I think we can get a lot of it done that way without it. And it doesn't have to be, it's just being nice to the public and say, hey, this is gonna happen. You take care of it. And I'd say 80% of them will take care of it.
So I know with like the snow removal that's been something that he's done, but he just takes them out, their general notices, and so there's nothing that he's actually needing to print in the vehicle. And that was kind of the idea, is there is an office component there for that individual. A lot of phone calls and things require research to be done, which is not always the easiest to do in the vehicle. But I would say at this point, he's done a really fantastic job of separating his time that he needs to be in the office, basically batching things together in order to get them processed and then doing the follow-up. So I would say we can certainly check and see if that would be something that would help him, but it's not something that he has brought up at this point. And realistically, when you're sending things via certified mail, that's a lot of extra stuff to have to carry around in the car with you too, to be able to do all that stuff.
Got it.
But I like how you think.
I think we're trying to be nice to these people. We don't want to have to take them to court. So let's just print them out a little thing that says, and I don't see where there's anything wrong with that.
So the thing to even backtrack on is, when are we taking them to court? Probably if it's a property maintenance issue. If it's your grass, snow, and everything, you get your notice. If you don't comply, then we're just going to abate the nuisance.
Gotcha.
Another use for the local option sales tax is to build up our cash reserve. So if you look on this over here, our cash flow reserve fund, last year you did send money into this from the lost account, and we're predicting a $16,000 interest income coming in. It's still short about $287,000 for this fiscal year to make it 15% of general fund expenditures. So that would be another use for your local option sales tax. And you can always use it to reduce the property tax. Use it more for property tax relief.
It'd be nice to have the money in there. Then, when we go to the bond market, we've met our requirements, and they really like it when you got cash.
Right.
I think in addition to cash, it's that you're fully funded to what your policy is.
So on the Coliseum, I'd like to bring this to your attention. It has been running in a deficit, so we transferred general fund money into the Coliseum to balance it. There was a beginning balance of the $3,997, so that's why this is a deficit this year. They have a fund balance, you just can't see it, so it zeroes them out for fiscal year 18, and then puts them in balance for fiscal year 19. So I know this is a lot of information for you. There's a lot of sheets to go through. So did you have any questions on any of the sheets? Any of the budgets?
And did you get an answer about the 4 questions that are on page 69?
Well, we heard from some people. I don't know if we have a consensus or...
What type of action are we looking for on this? I mean,
Yeah, I'm not sure we need a formal motion, but if there's consensus that all 4 budget questions should be answered the way that has been suggested, then the staff knows how to proceed. The first one was requests and proposals for funding from community entities. The second was to get proposals from the general fund departments. Third was, does the council want to see information about the impact of placing specific amounts of the lost into the cash reserve? And the fourth one was, does the council want to see information about the impact of placing lost amounts to property tax relief? Want to hit them one at a time?
I already did.
I think we, yeah, does anybody object to having the request for proposals out. It sounded like a consensus on that one.
And we would do it with the process of being due sometime next week, and those would be on the February 5th agenda for you to consider.
We'll consider that was a consensus then on that one. And proposals from the various departments. Does anybody have an objection to that?
I think, well, if there is something that somebody really held back on, like maybe for years even, but otherwise I guess I'm willing to say that they've put their budgets out there and they're comfortable with where things are. So I think we could probably take that one off the list.
I think that I would encourage us if there was something that because, you know, often when you're given a directive to say cut 5% or whatever it is, you cut something that you still think is vital to the services that you provide. So I would certainly, if, you know, through the thoughtful process, if a department had felt that there was something they cut that truly shouldn't have been cut, I would be willing to take a look at it again to say, you know, let's rationalize this at this point.
I agree.
Okay.
We could do this by a hand count since it doesn't really require a vote. Let's do that. Would you raise your right hand if you think that we ought to invite the departments to make proposals to us?
I'm okay with that. Yep.
Okay. Unanimous. Good. How about the third one for looking at using the loss for cash reserve?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We're good on that one. And last, looking at lost for property tax relief.
Yep.
Bailiwick.
Okay. Failed on that one.
Fail? Okay.
So you
That was just one of the purposes of the election. So, I mean, I understand it's any lawful purpose, but public purpose or property tax relief, but I think it would be interesting to see anyway. I hear people talk about their property taxes.
So can you clarify, you
It could
do
just
or
be a
you
portion.
don't want to see?
I would like to see it. Not the whole 661 applied toward property tax relief, but
Are we,
some
I was
portion
going to
of
say,
it.
is it the January 29th where we were going to go over the debt service levy?
And lost.
Okay.
Yep.
How about we'll certainly present the debt service levy and the total tax levy, and maybe then at that point you can decide if there's anything that you would like to do with local option sales tax to change that.
It's fine.
Okay. Any further discussion on this agenda item? Let's move to 10.5 on the capital improvement plan second draft.
Okay, so since we went over this last time, at the last council meeting, since then we went through and changed the revenue lines. We either increased it because we now know what the property tax valuation is, so we increased the 030 CIP revenue. Some other areas we increased for grant funds. So if they had an expenditure, we didn't have any revenue coming in, now we're going to put the grant money in there knowing that we can't spend it till we get the grant money. But it shows it balances out anyway. In some cases, we may have to bond or do the state revolving fund, use TIF, or increase enterprise fees. And then in some cases, we also changed the beginning fund balance, and we updated the interest income amounts. So I don't know if you want me to go over the changes that we made. Okay. For the expenses, we did make a few changes, so I'll bring those to your attention. In Fund 110, the road use tax on page 6, we reduced some expenses in fiscal year 18 and added them to fiscal year 19. That was for the street resurfacing and concrete repairs. For Fund 393, the TIF 4, on page 21, we reduced the downtown curb, sidewalks, and overlay project from $100,000 to $84,250. For Fund 612, the water pollution control revenue on page 22, we replaced the VoIP telephone project here for 5,000 and took it off of Fund 615. For Fund 741, the geo stormwater on page 29, we reduced expenses in fiscal year 18 and added them to fiscal year 19. And on page 30, the aquatic center concessions, that still is showing a deficit. We plan to raise prices this coming season to help offset that. So any questions?
One request. Street department is keeping a pickup that's being traded in by another department that's got quite a few miles on it, and we show that we're going to replace the one that the building inspector has, and it's only got 20,000 miles on it. So if we're going to keep one, is there a reason why we're not keeping the best one of the bunch? It's being traded in, and the other one's just being transferred.
Which, I was going to say, can you state which vehicle specifically you're talking about in the street department program?
I don't know where it's coming from, but in one of the departments, they're saving one of the pickups, one of the...
Justin, do you know which one that is?
Anyway, I think just take a look at that, because if we're going to get rid of a pickup that's only got 20,000 miles on it, and we want to keep one, let's take a look at that and to keep. You don't have to do it tonight. That's just something for you. I'd like you to look at.
We can certainly look at that. Michelle's not here to talk about the building department truck and the need for trade-in, and I think that we don't know exactly which one we're talking about here to comment specifically, so we will look at that.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions, concerns? Thank you, Diane.
You're welcome.
We are at public comment item number 11. Is there any comment from the public? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Oops, we almost didn't make it.
Anna Wolvers again, 213 Thomas Drive. Just want to know, how do we find answers and resolution that are tabled or put off later? I know we've mentioned Splash for Life several times and questions, and we put in funds and grants, and we hear nothing like in the community except for rumors, which spread rampantly. So how does an organization or a public person that presents, and you guys say questions, none, we sit down, we come back again and again and again, and we just don't hear answers? How do we get answers so that the city hears a cohesive message of, yes, this is a project our city values, wants, and what is being done to get there, rather than us coming to all the park and rec meetings and their master plan, and then we read in the paper, hey, the skate park's going to get 8 features, when that wasn't even a priority at any of the meetings. So just how do we get answers relayed to people that work and don't come to these meetings, and answers to our questions? I guess is just my general knowledge, and I'm not a politically minded person to get active and involved, but obviously that's something I'm very passionate about, is kids and safety for all and all abilities and all ages. And our city is doing great things with Mega 10 and trails and the soccer field, but I never hear Splash ever mentioned, and this community lost a significant amount of people, and there's a lot of people that are passionate about it, but they don't hear anything except for those rumors. So how do we bridge that gap as an active, involved community working together? That's my question.
Anybody want to field the question?
I was going to say the easiest way is the way that we plan for capital improvements is this time right now, and looking at, you know, what's in this document. Things that were in the Parks and Rec master plan were then taken and prioritized by Parks and Rec and were submitted. And so that's really where, if it's a capital project, something like the splash pad, which was a pretty significant dollar estimate, it would be planned as a capital project for the city. And so I can tell you that it is not listed here in the next 5 years, but it was also not listed in the Parks and Rec master plan with any sort of timeline to it. And so I think if there's an ongoing discussion, that's something that can be presented to, council, mayor, and myself can all add items to the agenda for discussion. And so that's something that we can determine when it's to be discussed. But the way it stands right now is that there's not any funding proposed for that in the next 5 years.
It also wasn't a direct question in the survey, and this happened 5 years ago, and it just keeps getting shoved under the rug. So I don't think we as a community have, 10, 15, 20 more years or more lives to just keep us spinning in our wheels. We were also told we couldn't get any help for funding or grants, but yet then we find grants for trails, or we find grants for Mega 10, or we find grants for this or that. And it doesn't convey a clear message to the community that we're working on this and that we find it as a priority is just a major concern, I guess.
Lee Botter, 401 Orchard Drive. As you know, I'm co-founder of Splash for Life, so I'm here representing, I guess, Splash, concerned business person, a mom, and yes, I am running for city council. So, situation that we have, I heard earlier when we're into the budget piece, that's one of my strengths is budgeting. And one of the things that I would like to see is that there is a consistent process out there, and you can use Community Foundation, use Martha Allen Tide. So there is a proposal, there is a set way that you do that, because I did send a letter to Jessica in September, and Jessica and I did meet over the information, asking for grant support, asking for the splash pad to be put into the same process that was handled for the Foostal courts. I have yet to receive a response. And that's one of the reasons I am running for council, is I do want transparency. I want accountability. From city staff, council, I want a consistent theme that goes out to our community. We are volunteers. We're both moms. We both work, as all of you guys do. We all want the best for Marshalltown. We all love the city. So if we can have some consistency, and when you come forward with projects, have a theme out there. Have it, this is the proposal, this is the format that you follow. Dylan Does does a great job with Community Foundation. Maybe use that format. Just food for thought, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? If not, we'll consider that we are adjourned at 6:52. Thanks for coming.